The sky above Earth shimmered unnaturally, like the fabric of reality itself had been stretched too thin. Then, with a pulse of violet light, they arrived. Hundreds of ships, their hulls dark as void stone, hung motionless in orbit, casting jagged shadows against the pale blue of Earth's atmosphere. The fleet was vast, a cosmic storm of metal and fire, each vessel bristling with weapons beyond human comprehension. They did not come in peace. Inside the United Nations Command Center, President Elaine Carter sat with her fingers steepled beneath her chin, eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. The Galactic Empire had made contact 47 minutes ago, not with an ambassador, not with a delegation, but with a message, cold, clinical, absolute. Surrender or be eradicated. Carter's jaw tightened as she glanced at General Hawthorne, the man responsible for Earth's defenses. His expression was unreadable, but the deep lines around his mouth betrayed tension. Beside him, Dr. Adrian Vance, lead scientist of the Strategic Technology Division, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "They gave us 1 hour to respond," Vance said. "That was 45 minutes ago." The room was silent except for the rhythmic tapping of the president's fingers against the polished surface of the table. She finally exhaled. "Put them through." A flickering image materialized in the center of the room. The alien was tall, draped in segmented armor that shimmered like oil on water. Its elongated head bore no visible mouth, only a pair of deep-set, luminous eyes. It studied them with something that might have been curiosity or disdain. "I am High Executive Vieroth of the Galactic Empire." The voice was a synthetic construct, distorted yet unervingly smooth. "You are in violation of Imperial Expansion Mandate 17. Earth belongs to the Empire. Your people will submit, or they will cease to exist." Carter leaned forward, her voice measured. "Humanity is not in the habit of surrendering to tyrants." A low, reverberating hum filled the room. Laughter, if it could be called that. "We have observed your kind. Primitive, reckless. You stumble through the void like children playing with fire. You do not comprehend the forces that shape this galaxy. But that is irrelevant. You will kneel, or you will burn." General Hawthorne's voice was iron. "You destroyed an unarmed station, a research outpost. Was that supposed to impress us?" "It was a demonstration," Vieroth said smoothly. "A mercy in truth. You have 6 minutes remaining." The transmission cut, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Carter looked at Hawthorne. "Casualties? 312. No survivors." The president exhaled sharply, her fist curling against the table. A station full of scientists, researchers, erased like they were nothing. "What's the status of planetary defenses?" Hawthorne's fingers danced across the console, bringing up a tactical map. "We have orbital defense platforms, missile systems, and the Aegis Fleet Station at Lagrange Point 4. But if their tech is as advanced as it looks, we won't last an hour." Dr. Vance adjusted his glasses again. "Then it's time," he said quietly. Carter's gaze sharpened. "You're certain?" "As certain as we can be." He hesitated. "We've never tested it at this scale. The consequences are unknown." Hawthorne grunted. "The consequences of doing nothing are very clear." Carter glanced at the countdown. 4 minutes left. The weight of the decision pressed against her ribs like a physical thing. The world outside remained eerily still. Somewhere in the streets of New York, a mother was holding her child. In Beijing, lovers whispered desperate promises. In Karachi, in Moscow, in Lagos, everywhere, people waited, their lives suspended between hope and oblivion. She pressed a button on the console. "Activate the protocol." Vance's expression darkened, but he nodded. "Understood." A silent command pulsed through secured channels, reaching the heart of Earth's most classified facility. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, a machine stirred, one whose existence had never been acknowledged. For years, scientists had worked in secrecy, deciphering equations that should not exist, unraveling relics that had no origin. The result was a single, unassuming switch. They called at the button. Hawthorne folded his arms. Now we wait. Above them, the Imperial fleet began its descent. The sky tore apart as the first wave of orbital bombardments began. Columns of fire streaked downward, leaving trails of molten ruin in their wake. Cities that had stood for centuries, monuments to human resilience, vanished in an instant, reduced to smoldering craters. The Empire had made its choice. There would be no negotiations. Inside the United Nations Command Center, alarms blared, warning of further incoming strikes. General Hawthorne's voice was sharp, cutting through the chaos. Status report. An officer at the terminal shouted over the noise. We've lost Shanghai, Berlin, and Johannesburg. Civilian casualties. She hesitated, eyes flickering over numbers that didn't seem real. Too high to estimate. President Carter's knuckles were bloodless as she gripped the table. The room was filled with the dull hum of crisis, voices overlapping, desperate, determined. What about our defenses? She demanded. Point defense systems are intercepting what they can, but their firepower is overwhelming, Hawthorne said grimly. Aegis fleet is engaging, but we're hemorrhaging ships. Dr. Vance stood apart from the others, his fingers dancing over a data tablet. The numbers confirmed what they all feared. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. Earth's defenses were crumbling. Humanity was outmatched. Above the planet, the war was being decided. Aegis fleet fought valiantly, but for every Imperial destroyer that fell, 5 more took its place. Automated drones swarmed against the invaders. Missile barges filled the void, but it was never enough. The Imperial flagship, Sovereign's Wrath, unleashed a beam of energy that speared through Earth's largest battlecruiser, splitting it in two. Wreckage burned in the upper atmosphere, the remnants of thousands of human lives lost in an instant. And yet, Earth did not surrender. In the command center, Carter's voice was ice. How much longer? Dr. Vance didn't look up. The system is primed. We just need. He hesitated, swallowing. Your order. A flicker of hesitation crossed Carter's face, but only for a moment. Do it. Vance exhaled sharply and pressed the command key. In the frozen expanse beneath Antarctica, ancient machinery rumbled to life. The air thrummed with an inaudible frequency, a pulse that rippled outward, unseen yet undeniable. In orbit, the Imperial fleet pressed forward. The Sovereign's Wrath positioned itself for the final strike, its weapons charging. Executor Vieroff watched from the command deck, his luminous eyes reflecting the blue glow of Earth. Victory was inevitable. This world would fall as so many had before it. Then something changed. The stars flickered, not like a power fluctuation, not like a failing sensor. They dimmed, as if reality itself had faltered. Vieroff straightened, mandibles twitching. Report. No one responded. The crew stood frozen, confusion flickering in their eyes. One by one, their instruments failed. Displays blinked. Power readings flatlined. Communications fell silent. The vast Imperial fleet, an armada of destruction, was disappearing. Not exploding. Not retreating. Vanishing. Vieroff opened his mouth to command a countermeasure. Then he too was gone. On Earth, the bombardment ceased. The screaming stopped. Fire still burned. Rubble still smoldered. But the sky was suddenly impossibly empty. No more invaders. No more warships. Just silence. In the command center, stunned faces turned toward the main display. Where once an armada had loomed, now there was nothing but the endless black of space. Carter exhaled slowly. It worked. Hawthorne was the first to break the silence. Where did they go? Dr. Vance didn't answer. He was still staring at the screen, his fingers trembling over the controls. The data was impossible. The numbers didn't make sense. The Galactic Empire wasn't just gone. It had never existed. The world stood on the edge of understanding. Across Earth, celebrations had erupted. Cities in ruin, yet voices rose in victory. People embraced in the streets, their relief raw, their tears mixing with the dust of fallen buildings. But inside the United Nations Command Center, no one was celebrating. The screen before them showed the impossible, and the weight of it pressed down like gravity itself. General Hawthorne leaned over the console, jaw tight. "Are we certain?" Dr. Vance's fingers twitched over the keyboard, scrolling through endless streams of data. His throat felt dry. "It's not just their fleet. It's not just their soldiers." He hesitated, then looked up, his eyes dark with something that might have been fear. "The Galactic Empire never existed." President Carter frowned. "That's not possible." "It shouldn't be," Vance agreed. "But it is." The button had been theorized as a defensive measure, a last resort built from remnants of an artifact found buried deep beneath Antarctica. The technology was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, ancient, incomprehensible. For years, Earth's greatest minds had worked to understand it, to harness it, and now they had. But no one had expected this. Carter turned to the main screen. The galactic map flickered, shifting, rewriting itself. Where once the Empire's vast territories had stretched across the stars, there was now only empty space. No occupied planets, no historical records, no trace of war, of conquest, of anything at all. It was as if they had been erased from time itself. A slow, creeping horror settled over the room. Hawthorne exhaled sharply. "So, we didn't just kill them. We deleted them?" Vance nodded. "Not just them. Their history, their entire civilization. The laws of causality should make that impossible, but..." He trailed off, scrolling through yet another set of impossibilities. "It's like the universe corrected itself. They were never meant to be here." Carter straightened. "If they were never meant to be here, then what were we fighting?" Vance had no answer. Outside, the world was already shifting. The records of the Empire, the news reports of their attack, gone. Even the wreckage from the orbital bombardment was disappearing, as if reality itself was smoothing over the scars. Buildings still lay in ruin, yet there were no traces of the weapons that had destroyed them. Survivors still remembered, but history did not. Hawthorne turned to Vance, voice low. "We were losing that war. They had us outgunned, outmatched. So why did the button let us win?" Vance shook his head. "I don't know. It was the truth, and that made it worse. The button was beyond human science. It had worked, but how? And why?" The thought was still settling in when the signal came. A transmission, ancient yet immediate, an echo through space and time itself. It arrived on no known frequency, bypassing encryption as if such things were meaningless. No language, no symbols, just a single, undeniable message burned into the screen. "You have broken the laws of existence. We are coming." For the first time since the war began, the command center fell completely silent. Then Carter inhaled and turned to her people. "Get me everything we have on the button. Now." No one moved. No one breathed. Outside, humanity cheered its victory. Inside, its leaders realized something far worse had begun. The sky fractured, not like a storm breaking, not like clouds parting, fractured, as if the very fabric of reality had cracked under an unseen weight. Above Earth, where once there had been open stars, now something else loomed. Vast, incomprehensible, its shape shifting in ways the human mind could barely process. It was not a fleet. It was not an army. It was something older. Inside the United Nations Command Center, alarms shrieked warnings, but no one could move. Screens flickered, data feeds scrambled, and yet the signal remained, unwavering in its message. "You have broken the laws of existence. We are coming." General Hawthorne was the first to break free from the paralysis gripping the room. He turned to Dr. Vance, his voice tight. "Tell me you have something. Anything." Vance was hunched over his console, fingers shaking as they danced across the keys. "There's nothing to analyze. This isn't a signal. It's a presence." He swallowed. "They're already here. President Carter straightened, steeling herself. Open a channel. A technician hesitated before obeying, and then silence. The usual hum of electronic communication, the soft static of a transmission opening. None of it came. Instead, the room itself darkened, as if something vast had blotted out the sun. A voice filled the space. It did not come from the speakers. It did not emerge from any known source. It simply was, "You have done what should not be done." The words weren't spoken. They arrived fully formed in the minds of everyone present, sinking into their thoughts like weights dragging them down into an ocean of understanding they were never meant to reach. Carter clenched her fists against the pressure. "Who are you?" The air trembled. "We are the custodians. We are the keepers of order. We are that which watches, that which corrects." Hawthorne exhaled sharply, his grip tightening on the edge of the table. "And what exactly have we done to need correcting?" A pause, a deep, unfathomable silence. Then, "You have erased." The word hung heavy in the air, and in that instant, the weight of their actions fully settled onto the room. They hadn't won a war. They hadn't defeated an empire. They had removed it, unwritten it, unmade it. Carter's voice was steady, but there was something else beneath it now. We were defending ourselves. The presence shifted, not in movement, not in sound, but in a way that sent a crawling sensation through the minds of all who listened. You wield power beyond your understanding, power that was never meant to be held by your kind. Vance took a step forward. Then who was it meant for? Another pause, a longer silence, then a response. Those who came before, those who made war in the time before time. They were undone for their crimes, their weapons erased, but one remained. And now, you have used it, the button. Carter exhaled, slow and measured. If it was meant to be erased, why did it survive? The presence darkened. Because something always survives. Hawthorne's voice was steel. And what happens now? There was no delay in the response, no hesitation. You will surrender it, or you will join what you have erased. The weight of the ultimatum pressed down like gravity itself. The fate of humanity teetered on the edge of something far greater than war, far greater than survival. Carter closed her eyes for half a second, then looked up. Her voice did not waver. "We need to talk."